When these guys walk out the door of whatever score they're gonna take next, they're gonna have the surprise of a lifetime.
Heat reminded me of a Greek tragedy. It had so many legs, so many threads, and then it all began to pull in together.
These are morality tales, in a sense. You know, I think they are morality tales, and it's ways of examining the human personality and their weaknesses, you know.
Heat, in my opinion, is the culmination of about 20 years of research on Michael's part.
You went to Michael Mann's world, and you felt it was, no matter where we were in location, there he was, and it was his world.
Heat is like watching reality. It's like watching the 6 o'clock news, only amped up 100%.
A premise for me, or that I had, is about the whole of the film, and that goes all the way back to the writing, which was that just as each person is a universe unto himself, everybody has a life. We tend to two-dimensionalize antagonists in a motion picture. To me, they're much more fascinating if I and the actors and everybody else have the ability to imagine and expand and inflate that into the dimensionality of a life. So that was the idea. In Heat, you know, when you do what I do, this is what gets you going.
This crew is good. You know what they're looking at?
What?
Us. The LAPD, the police department. We just got made.
First time I decided to write it, I was writing television, and I hadn't even directed Jericho Mile yet, so the chance of me directing this was remote. But it was one of those stories that I felt was such a complex fabric that it would have to really be compressed, particularly thematically. Like, what's the movie about? What's it really about? I took about 40% of the script and decided to do it as a television movie, just to work with the material, because I was drawn to it. So I wound up doing LA Takedown.
It was shot originally, you know, as a pilot possibility of being a television show. The story certainly generally the same, but there's so many other pieces that, you know, you didn't have in LA Takedown that were in Heat that made it a complete film.
If I'd gone to television series, it would have been interesting, you know, that'd have been a nice use of the material, but I'd always planned to make a large motion picture out of it. And it was kind of a prototype, because it was a television shooting sketch. I think I shot it in 17, 18 days, so it was kind of a sketch. And then after that, about 2-3 years after that, I was having breakfast with my friend Art Linson, and the subject came up. I said, well, man, you ought to read the whole screenplay, you know, so I gave him the screenplay. And it was absolutely Art who said to me, you're crazy. You should do this as a feature film right now. This should be your next film. And that was absolutely Art's encouragement that caused me to do it.
I read the script and I went, oh, fantastic, you know, perfect. Bob De Niro for this villain, fantastic. And at the time, I said, I think we can get Bob to do this.
Art went after Bob, I went after Al. Those were our first two choices about who should play these parts. Both guys said yes, and that was it, you know. And then I had, what was nice about it is that it had not been developed anywhere, and I owned my own material. So I had a screenplay, and we had a director, and we had a producer, and we had Bob and Al.
I remember Michael showing me this relatively classic story of a pursuit. I remember thinking when I read it that I thought the part that was right for me was the cop. And so I was happy that he wanted me to play the cop.
The style of Vincent Hanna is an Al Pacino style, you know. It's more Baroque. The way he works witnesses, the way he works informants, the way he'll disorient the informant he's with, and making sure that the informant is never on terra firma. When Hanna's working with Ricky Harris, he keeps this guy completely off balance on whether he's going to break into song or berate him or why he wasn't there. And that style, that's Al Pacino.
I thought that I would need to be a little bit more hyper than Robert's character.
Give me all you got! Listen, give me all you got! I swear, me and my brother, My brother Richard's gonna talk to you.
I heard Richard. We came up with the idea that my character chipped cocaine. We sort of formulated the character to be that kind of person so that every once in a while he would explode, you know. And it's a good thing to know that. It's not in the picture, but that's part of what motivated him from time to time. He was a little high.
I ain't your cuz, you rat motherfucker. And you know, 'cause I say so. After I hear what the fuck you gotta tell me.
Look here, man. You understand what I'm saying? I'd get killed for telling you this shit.
Kill walking your doggy.
I went out on a limb with that character, can sometimes go a little bit histrionic, a little bit too far. But Michael encouraged it and understood it in relation to the kind of movie we were making and the yin and yang of what Robert was doing, what I was doing.
In most of these situations, it's easier to portray the thieves and the criminals than it is Hannah. And for a long time, I didn't really have Hannah as an equally complex character who had his own dynamic.
It's the journey, not the destination with Hannah. The journey. He's a hunter. And once he gets a scent of his prey, it sort of self-motivates him and it perpetuates him.
Hannah is addicted to this process. This is an elevated state of being an avid hunter and pursuing this, putting together the pieces, sifting through the minutiae, the leavings of a crime scene and putting together what had happened and tracking the people down and getting them and prosecuting them. I mean, that is the elevated experience of this guy's life, and it is a high like no other, and that's what he is turned on by, and that's what he's going to do, and he knows he's going to forego anything and everything else to continue to doing that.
I think he found solace in that world, a certain peace there. As strange as it was, as scary as that world is, he was happiest there. He felt at home there.
Is one thing. When he destroys a lot of the relationships in his life because of it, that's something else. When he is completely and totally conscious as a human being and honest with himself and understands that, all I am is what I'm going after. And that it's not the woman's fault. It's not the situation's fault. It's not unfortunate. Fortune didn't enter into it. He caused these things to happen, and he'll cause them to happen again.
You search for signs of passing, for the scent of your prey, and then you hunt them down. That's the only thing you're committed to.
Life is not an either-or set of binaries. That's something that we compress real life into fiction and make it be that way because it's convenient and mechanically symmetrical. Life's not like that, and that's what excites me, when the power of a character like Hannah to hold seeming dualities in suspense, both at 100%. One doesn't compromise the other. His appreciation for Neil McCauley doesn't compromise one iota. His avidity as a hunter to take down Neil McCauley. Both coexist.
We're sitting here, you and I, like a couple of regular fellas. You do what you do, I do what I gotta do. And now that we've been face to face, if I'm there and I gotta put you away, I won't like it. But I'll tell you, if it's between you and some poor bastard whose wife you're gonna turn into a widow, brother, you are going down.
Art Linson gave me the script and said, read this, I think you'll find it interesting, and I just liked it. I came in first in terms of I committed to the project, and it was Al. And if it had been reversed and he said he was doing Neil, I know I would have gone in on it. But I mean, the one scene like the one that Al and I have is a terrifically written scene. I said, it'll be fun to work on this one.
The fusion of Robert De Niro and Neil McCauley is so total. I can't imagine pulling those two identities apart and telling you why Bobby was right for it. He's committed to the rigidity of that, perspective. And it's a heartbreaking role. It's a tragic, tragic character. What was interesting to me and what's important is that he's autodidactic, he's self-taught, and he elected to have this rigid perspective. Because it's rigid, if he deviates from it, then the repercussions are rigid. And the reason for that is completely practical. It's no other reason, and that is because whatever you're attached to will make you deviate from the most efficient, practical actions.
All I know is there's no point in me going anywhere anymore. I'm just gonna be alone without you. Edie. In his world, what he's doing, he feels justified in doing it. And the old thing with, with actors, acting is you always have to like your character, more or less. You have to justify what they're doing and feel that it's possible that they could do this, otherwise there's no point in doing it.
You know, I see who he is when all the, that robbery goes awry, and then I try to escape from him. And then that scene where he's kneeling, and I think for his character to kneel in front of a woman, that's where the hope was, but you don't escape, you just don't escape.
Well, she's important to Neil because Neil wasn't, he's doing everything by the book, and life doesn't work that way, Neil goes with this program that he has for himself, and he gets sidetracked by something that he never expected, which is usually when those things happen, I guess.
The thing that was great about the idea of Bob doing this is he creates a character you start to root for even in his badness. That's a very hard thing to do. Very few actors can do it. By the end of the movie, you almost want him to live instead of Al Pacino. It's part writing, it's part what Michael did, but it's considerably part of what Bob did.
Characters are defined by behavior, not necessarily what they say, but what they do. And once Michael directs you into the inner workings of De Niro's character, and you understand him, and you see him grow and evolve, where he can't walk away, which has been his life philosophy. He falls in love. You pull for him because there's love right there dangling, but he turns and he goes back. And you just go, oh my God. But Michael gets you so involved in the character's inner workings because he knows every single layer of every character that's on screen.
Michael's interested in the moment, that moment when what you decide will impact your life forever. You will be a different person. If you do this, you will forever be diminished. Or if you do that, you will maintain your integrity and dignity as a human being.
It's not so much good and evil, but the gray areas that exist where you don't know necessarily whether it's good or evil. It's just a choice.
The thing that struck me that was so special about what Michael had achieved there, and I know in his case it's intentional, is he made no judgment about who was good and who was bad. He just let you see what is. And so suddenly you realize that the cop's personal life is as truly fucked up as the robber's personal life. And that both of them, in as many ways, have to deal with the exact same issues and deal with them with the same integrity or the same lack of integrity as the other. And so the thing that makes the movie so special is that it's not this one-dimensional thing about a chase of the good guy against the bad guy. It's very complicated. You get lost into who's on which side. The fact that he was able to write something so special to kind of merge the two worlds, like without making any judgment that one's better than the other, it just is. That's, I think, the genius of the piece.
One of the things that interested me a lot in building the characters that are inside the film was to individualize every part, including small parts. So therefore, I wanted as much polarization in the casting of every single part. So everybody, you felt that every single person was, as in fact each person is, a total individual, a universe in and unto themselves.
Waingro, where is he? Where is he?
How the hell would I know?
Michael's strengths are the fact that in this particular adaptation of his own material, it had depth to the characters. And it's the depth that makes it a classic, not the precise, brilliant shooting and the quote style. I'm not saying style's not part of it, but it's certainly, in my place, is in second position to the content. And I think the content comes from the writing, and the content comes from the performances.
Every aspect of
The story, no matter how seemingly small, had to be really authentic, which meant that the actors portraying those aspects of the story had to be authentically really incredible actors.
The casting process didn't finish. He was shooting the movie and we were still casting. As a matter of fact, it went on for a long time, in a good way, because we get some very interesting characters.
I didn't know if I wanted to do it right away, and I talked to Michael. I said, Michael, you know, this character is very specific, and I think there are guys walking around that you could get to be very authentic for this character. He said, yeah, but John, you know, then we wouldn't get a chance to work together. That was such a nice compliment to me, you know, that he wanted to work with me. And with that said, I said I'd throw in and do it with him, you know.
I read the script, and I didn't like it. And then a week later, they said, well, Michael really wants to meet you anyway. So I went in and I met him, and he said, I hear you don't like my script. And I said, yeah, I don't like it. And he said, why don't you like it? And I said, because the people are despicable, and there's too much blood, and there's no morality, and I don't want to be part of it. And he said at that moment he knew that I had to play Edie, because she is the only one in the movie saying, who are you people?
Michael knows exactly what he wants, which is really great to have if you're acting. His attention to detail and his involvement with every aspect of it is very strong, and you can feel him in every part of the film, which is basically what his job is. I mean, that's your job when you make a movie, is to have people feel what you're feeling.
And there are many things that actors usually have to concern themselves with that really aren't their job, but they're just things in order to create a whole character, and he's just thoroughly involved in every single aspect. He takes the time, he works out the film experience so that it's ideal.
Working for Michael Mann is like taking that nice, slow backswing and just following through. He would always just say, look, just be yourself. Don't put anything on it. Just be. And that was a great lesson for me, because you always want to be more demonstrative. You have this idea of who this character is, so you're going to bring in all this stuff. And the characters are just so rich. I mean, it was like a great action-adventure chess match.
On one level, you're dealing with a crime saga, but also on the other, you deal with the interpersonal relationships that are woven through the entire picture.
This was a huge opera, and we all played our parts, and my part was, you know, the hope that De Niro's character could have of escape and love and forgiveness. There's something so sad about it, so poignant. You know, these people are so lost and they want to be found so badly.
What you hanging with me for, Lillian?
Because I'm proud of you.
You proud of me? What the hell you proud of me for?
There was a sense of drive to a certain point, move into the inner lives of these people, explore that in a very formal structure. Everything has changed, their circumstances all change, and then that results in resuming the crime story drive and police story drive. The small idea of the film is that fortune does not really enter into it. People say, well, unfortunately this happened, or fortuitously that happened. Well, that's bullshit. There is not much fortune in what happens. I mean, if it enters into it, but it's a minor player in what happens in our lives. Most of what happens in our lives is what we have cause to have happen. And sometimes it's impossible to undo the interlacing strings of causality. It needs some kind of cosmic microscope to look into each of our lives to see what cause and effect produce the present. But it's things that we made happen for the most part, consciously, unconsciously, so that there's a kind of a almost moral and causal relativity. So that's what the fate is in the film. I mean, it was just something you had to figure out. So that Neil, precisely because he is very dogmatic in his approach, if he deviates from that rigid idea of here's how I must be, then perforce things will go wrong. Okay, he can't suddenly go get all spontaneous. It's all of a sudden there's no rudder on that boat, and then he's subject and vulnerable to being swept by emotions, like the idea to go back after Waingro, which he shouldn't have done, which Neil McCauley in the beginning of the film never in a million years would have done. But because he elected to be spontaneous in his emotional commitment to Edie, it undid all of them. Whereas Krisha Hurlis, who has no form and is formless, is completely adaptable, and he survives, and then we'll call it can't survive. So what each character, who and what each character is and sets up for himself, determines what happens to him. And so the conceit of the film is that the laws of cause and effect, what will befall you, is a function of how you think about the life you're in.